Come on in. Whoa. It's way too close.
Hey, what's up, guys? Daniel here with the brewery. We are going live again here for our Social Tuesdays. So this is basically when we, if you have the chance to go out to the Brewery Taru, you can taste all the new beers before they come out tomorrow for hoarders. If you don't, then we're going to talk about them. We're going to tell you the stories behind them, and we're going to do a little bit of tasting. Before we get into that, just a couple cool new updates and some news from the brewery here. So first and foremost, new releases come out tomorrow for Hoarders members, on Thursday for Reserve Society members, and then, on Wednesday. What day is it? It's Tuesday. So then on Friday for Preservation Society members. So tomorrow, the day after, that's when you can go get your new releases. We have a lot of new releases. Some of the cool things about a few of the releases this month are you've actually either seen them conceived live on this live stream in the past, or we've had some of the collaborators on this live stream in the past as well. So that's exciting. Tasting rooms. So we are open at our tasting rooms. Just go to thebrewery.com/visit to check out the hours and all of our new regulations. So you do have to purchase food right now in order to purchase beer, and we are only offering outside dining. So a couple changes there. Another exciting thing coming up here pretty quickly is we are actually going to be launching a new version of the website that has some really cool features for members. You'll have a digital cellar where you'll be able to organize your beers and select which beers you want to get picked up. But with that comes a little bit of downtime as we transition. So just mark your calendars on the 19th and the 20th. We will be down as we transition over, but on the 21st, we'll be back online with a whole new platform that should be pretty exciting. Make it a little bit easier for you to get your beers and organize your beers. Local delivery is still happening, so if you order before 2, we'll get it to you same day. And yeah, lots of exciting stuff. So we're gonna start tasting through some beers. Before we do that, I'm gonna let the guys introduce themselves. We have a new face on today. A lot of you, if you've ever been to Taru, you've probably met and or seen him before. So Damien's on. We're going to have some fun with him. But first and foremost, 6 years today, I believe. So cheers to Damien, 6 years at the brewery. Congrats. Love having you here. But yeah, let's go ahead and get started here. So I'm going to start with everybody's probably met Andrew if you watched this before. But Andrew, quick intro. Who are you? What do you do?
Yeah, I'm Andrew Bell. I'm the innovation manager here at the Brewery Taru and Offshoot Beer Co. And basically you get to play around with the recipes, raw materials, and our pilot system. So work closely with Keith on the production management side of things. So been here for a little over 8 years now, so time flies.
Cool. Keith.
Hey guys, so Keith, I actually work at Brewery Taru with Damien. So I'm the production manager over at the Wild and Sour production facility. So we specifically focus on wild fermentation and sour fermentation.
Awesome. And now new face, Damien, man. So first of all, tell us a little bit about what you do here at the brewery, and then let us know what your favorite beer over the last 6 years has been that you've gotten to try from us.
My name's Damien. I'm a cellar technician at Taru. Work on the sour side, of course. Been working here for 6 years today. Today's my 6-year anniversary. It's crazy. Favorite beer's got to be Hot and Rock, and I absolutely love that beer. It is one of the greatest beers I've ever had, just in general.
Can you give us your sensory notes on it? I wanna hear aroma. Body. No, I'm just playing with you, dude.
It's a good beer to play sports with. Basketball, disc golf, regular golf, ball golf. It's an amazing beer. Just all around, just Swiss Army knife beer.
Awesome, man. So we actually have one more brewer coming on. A little late to the show, but we have Jake Thompson coming on right now. So a lot of you, if you're members or you've ever ordered online, you've probably met him on both coasts. So he was over in DC, came over here to California, and now he's kicking ass over in our fulfillment center. Probably a familiar face to a lot of you members out there. But let's bring him on. What's up, Jake? How's it going, man?
What's going on, guys?
Cool. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your story here at the brewery, what you do, and then what's your favorite brewery beer?
Sure. Yeah, I've been with the brewery for like a little over 2 years now. Like you said earlier, I started out in DC, working with Ethan and Josh and all those cool guys over there. And long story short, I had some circumstances going on in life that gave me the opportunity to come out to California, Southern California in particular, and it just so happened that the company I work for was already there. So it was a pretty smooth transition and good for me because I like working here. So didn't have to go find a new job. That was great. So here I'm in California now. Favorite beer from the brewery is probably Westwood. That beer just is amazing. I think really does a great job of showing like our true like bourbon barrel aged characteristics in our beers. Just a phenomenal beer all around.
Awesome, man. Okay, so we're gonna start tasting some beers. We're gonna get kind of the stories behind them. We're gonna go through some tasting notes, but this week a little different. We want to kind of answer your questions as we go along. So if you have questions about the beers or anything really, throw them in the comments. We'll pull them up. We'll answer them real time, as much as we can. But yeah, let's get started. Here's a good question to get started with for Keith and Bell and pretty much everybody here. Is it true that behind the scenes, the brewery is basically a Willy Wonka's chocolate factory of brewing? Please say it's true.
It's absolutely true. I've seen a couple chocolate rivers at the brewery. Absolutely true. Like, without a doubt.
Pretty much.
The amount of ingredients we use, it's like a candy shop. Ingredients are everywhere. The sweetness is everywhere. It's fantastic.
Yeah, perfectly put. Yeah,
I agree. Seen some coconut rivers over at Taru.
Coconut Rivers. All right, let's get started. So first beer we're going to talk about today is one we've brewed before. It's kind of a fan favorite. I think we were just talking about this before we came on, but we have a re-release of Saurento, which is basically sour blonde, oak barrels, lemon zest, vanilla beans. Let's pour it. Let's taste it. Get your questions into the comments on this beer, and yeah, let's start it off. So. No pressure on the new face, but Damien, why don't you open things up? Give us your thoughts on this beer. What are you smelling? What are you tasting? And let's get this conversation going.
Right away on the nose. There's no doubt. Absolutely no doubt. Just straight up. Like,
you gotta pull your mouth out of the glass when you talk so we can hear you.
I am sorry. Yeah, just a vanilla bomb. It is crazy how much vanilla you get on this nose. Taste.
Yeah, so the vanilla on this, Andrew, I think can maybe speak better to like the source on it, but it's like they're like those really wet vanilla beans. I'm not sure exactly why they're that way, Andrew, but
yeah, they're just super high moisture content. They're like there's the there are these Madagascar grade A vanilla beans that we kind of came across maybe about 9 months, a year ago, that are just like the most insanely juicy and huge vanilla beans that I've ever seen. I mean, you see these little like jars of things in like Whole Foods or something, these little shriveled up vanilla beans. And it's nothing like that. These beans are nearly a foot long, like, and you just squeeze them and the caviar just shoots out. They're incredible quality. So I think they make a huge impact on this beer. And yeah, I would say straight up in front, you get a huge amount of vanilla, which also blends really well with the oak character in it. And then you get the sort of lemon kind of backing, and it makes it, for a beer that's completely dry, it makes it really have this creamy impression. And that's pretty nice. But yeah, I'll let Keith and Damien get into a little bit of the backstory of like how this beer is made this year. But as Daniel had said, we've made this beer once or twice before, and it actually started out as a cask of sour blonde back in the day for a festival. That was just like lemon zest and vanilla and a little bit, back then it had a little bit of lactose in it to try and get like a limoncello type flavor vibe going. So I'll let you guys take it over.
Yeah, so when we actually do this in a bottle, one thing that's a main difference between working with wild yeast strains and clean yeast strains is we can't typically add lactose to sour beer without it re-fermenting. And if we're going to put this in a package that's going to be sent like to a customer's home, we can't just add lactose. So that would be the departure from the lactose. But like as Andrew's saying, the vanilla beans really lend a lot of sweetness to this, and a perceived sweetness that kind of backs up that lactose that was originally there. But honestly, I don't think I've ever had the original, and I absolutely love this beer every time we make it.
Yeah, it's a fun one for sure.
Cool.
Yeah, we're definitely getting better at making this beer. It's every time we make it, it's just like wow, it's flavors just get a little bit more intense, and this beer, you can tell just by the nose that it's like wow, a lot of vanilla.
We mean you can't be shy, man. You got to speak up for us. I know it's your first time. Just Andrew Bell has this. Just speak. Just you got to use it from your chest, man.
Yeah.
I will. I don't want to be too loud, but I will project my voice.
Perfect, right there.
All right, so I'm not seeing a ton of questions on this one.
Dave liked it.
Jake,
That's
you
all
want to
that
give us some
matters.
thoughts on this beer, man? We like to hear everyone's thoughts. Give us your take.
I mean, like I think like everybody else said, you definitely get the vanilla up front. But I think what I really like about the vanilla is that it kind of like the way that it's like got like this velvety coating to it. Also, that kind of lends itself to being like a little bit of like a sour dessert beer. Kind of does have kind of like those notes that you'd want out of like the actual dessert itself that it's modeled after. So this beer was awesome last time we put it out. I think you guys, if possible, actually made it even better. Not really noticing any like difference between the non-lactose and this one in terms of like it being any less of a beer. It's awesome. I'm struggling not to have it all right now.
Cool. So here's a question that's probably good for Keith, I would think. We have one right here. Keith, how does this vintage differ from last year's vintage? What's new? What's different? Or if it's the same, what can we expect as an evolution of the beer if you have a bottle of last year's version or can?
Yeah, it was a can. Yeah. So last year we did a can. So the target honestly is always the same, but it's always going to be a little bit different because of the sourcing of ingredients. And one of the main differences is what we talked about earlier is the vanilla bean sourcing. So it is a little bit different vanilla bean that we're really happy with. Also, the vintages of the sour blonde base are always going to be a little bit different. That's just a natural progression of running a sour facility and barrel aging. So, I mean, we're always looking for kind of like a fruity, vanilla type sour blonde beer to put more lemon zest in. So we do hand zest all of these lemons and put that into the sour blonde and add vanilla bean straight to the barrel. So it is going to differ slightly. That's just the nature of the way we work. I mean, that's kind of the fun of it. It is going to be slightly different, but the target's always there, and we're always trying and usually achieving better.
Yep.
That's
just to kind of add on to that, and I don't know if this is just like the marketer in me, but like when you see these guys, you walk through like the cellar and you see them hand zesting and even in some cases like this month hand corking. I don't know if it makes it taste better or you just see more of like the love put into these beers, but there's just something really special about it. If you ever once we reopen, if you ever have a chance to do like a cellar tour or a brewery tour, it's totally worth it, and you really feel like the love that goes into every one of these beers. That being said, let's move on to the next beer. So this is another one that's kind of a repeat. So we've done it before, but this is the reserve version. And so this is one of my favorite packages, branding and visually wise, that we put out this year. The beer's fantastic. I'm sure many of you have tried Sans Paget before, but Sans Paget Reserve, brand new beer. And I guess let's start this one off again. Maybe Keith's the guy to start talking about it. But what's up with the Reserve moniker? Why is this Sans Paget Reserve? Not to put you on the spot.
Because we reserved it for you. So this year is actually we used the base of our Train to Beer Soul base. So it is going to be a lot, not a lot higher, but higher ABV. Yeah, honestly, I think Andrew might have a better story of the background of this beer, because I do think you may have been around here first. So Sans Paget, that means without a paddle. It's styled after a Belgian creek, so it's up a creek without a paddle. It's cute. Yeah,
very cute.
I can't remember if that was a Cambria name or if that was a Ben name. I think it's probably a Ben name actually.
The brewery name.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah. But some people come up with certain funny names. Keep track of them, but yeah, it's something we've been making since. I want to say first release was in 2012. And it's kind of evolved. The regular base Sans Paget has kind of evolved over time, both with the sort of cherry source we use, and the amount of cherry and the amount of funk. But its general theme is yes, like cherry-inspired lambic or creek beer. You guys did pretty good on this one. So
Let's get some tasting notes here. What are we getting on the nose? What's on the palate? Who wants to take it? I'm gonna pick them.
I'll take it.
Let's do it.
Yeah, I think for me this beer came out absolutely phenomenal. I think for me this really reminds me closer to what a truer Belgian creek actually tastes like. It has a lot more funk on the nose than previous years, and I don't know if that's because of the higher alcohol or maybe like the beer is shining through more than previous years where the cherry shined through more. But on the nose for me, it's a ton of funk, a ton of cherry funk. And then the flavor of the cherries just really come through on the palate.
yeah, I think it's that Train to Beer Soul base in general. Like from what I've tasted, it seems like that base is a little bit more funky than Sour Blonde. But yeah, there's a lot of funk going on, but it gets sort of balanced in the mouth by the cherry. The cherry's like big time on the palate, but like the nose is mostly funk, which is it's cool. I like it.
So I know.
10% is crazy.
It is crazy. So talking to Jeremy earlier, I know that like kind of the reserve moniker really came from it was choice barrels. So we specifically chose these barrels because we thought they were performing well and would perform well in this beer, and that's kind of where the reserve name came from. And now let's get to some questions. I think I see one here, not a super technical question, but was the bottle chosen for any technical reason or for looks? This is 100% for looks. We basically we wanted the package to reflect the quality of the beer, and we thought this bottle did its service, made it stick out, made it look very premium, and we just kind of liked how it looked. So that was a Sour J choice, I believe. He picked out this bottle and told my team make a label for it.
And then he
told
my team. Yeah, and then he told my team, me and Damien, like, hey, package it. It's like what machine?
Yeah.
With the
Okay.
damn cork in it too.
So the Taru team is the machine that packaged this beer, hand corked.
Yeah.
And
And
I'm
labeled.
95% sure Damien applied the label by hand for all of these
Yeah.
bottles. So, like, it is. It's a
Yeah,
lot of
sure.
care and a lot of love in these package types. But
Absolutely.
they look really good, and they really do showcase like what we're trying to do with the project. It is a beer that's really special to us.
Awesome. I'm gonna give everybody a few seconds to see if there's any more questions, and while we're waiting for that, I'll ask Jake just because he's been a little quiet. Jake, what's been your favorite brewery release this year?
Oh wow. Probably Sour on the Rye with pineapple and coconut. Like Sour on the Rye is probably like one of my favorite brewery beers. Period. I always love like the variants that we do. I know we did like a rum barrel aged version. I think that came out last year as like a hoarders only bottle. And that last year was like easily one of my favorites. So when I saw that like the straight up pineapple coconut was on the docket for the 2020 line plan, I already knew I was gonna be freaking out over it. So I'd say without a doubt that's probably like one of the ones I'm most psyched for.
Hell yeah.
Can't go wrong with the Pilsner either though.
That's true.
That is very
Pilsner
true.
is crushing.
Or the escape. Like, can't go wrong.
All right, I think that we're good to move on. Here's a little question we have. Damien, what's your F1 TV password?
I will have to message him on the side for that password.
I don't even know what that means, but let's move on.
Formula One racing.
Oh, you watch Formula One racing? Wow.
Yeah, it is. The quarantine's made me get into a lot of
Anything to get some sporting in, right?
yeah. It's
I've
up.
been watching Formula One every race since 1999. So
That's awesome. I just started this February a Netflix show on Formula One. It's
It's unfortunate. Bell's better at you than you at watching Formula One racing. That's been made clear.
He's better at making basketball. So
That's true. Better than both of these guys.
All right, let's keep this on.
Let's ask.
Let's move on to the next one. So we're actually going to kind of talk about these next three beers as a group because they were created as a group. They were inspired and they were crafted to be consumed as a group. So next up, we're going to talk about the Chef Brook collaboration beers. We're actually really excited about these. It's been a long time in the making. We had Chef Brook on the live stream. Oh my gosh, it's been almost a few months ago now. But we've had a lot of fun making these. So we went up to wine country, had some wine, tasted grapes with her. We've done some fun stuff. We've had her in the brew house and in the barrel house tasting and pulling nails, and this has been a long time in the making. So I think the fun thing about this project was these beers were kind of in collaboration with Brook. They were made to specifically be paired with food, right? So it's not that one beer is your dessert beer, one beer is your appetizer beer. We felt like all of them are complex enough to be kind of rotated around, and you can kind of make up your mind what you want to pair it with, and they can pair with a lot of things. And we have some fun stuff coming up. So Brook's we're going to be working with Brook to kind of get some maybe some recipes, but at least some ideas out there for what to do with these beers. And of course, members are going to get to try them first. These will be hitting distribution in a limited amount, so that's pretty fun. But first beer up that we're going to talk about is the Berry. So these beers were kind of named as a group. It's Provisions with Chef Brook. It's kind of a throwback to Provisions, if any of you guys remember the Provision series and the Provision store. But yeah, let's start talking about the Berry. So the Berry, triple with Huckleberry. Bell probably would have the most to say about this one to get us started. So Andrew, what's going on with this beer, man?
yeah, so it's a fun beer, as you said. It's a Belgian style triple with Huckleberry. But beyond that, it's a very simple beer in its construction. It's basically 2 malts and our house yeast and a little bit of hop and then Huckleberry. But what's in your glass is a little bit more complex than just that on paper. You definitely get a huge amount of the base sort of Belgian triple with its more spicy phenolic ester like yeast character, and then you get this underlying like jamminess to the berry character. It is bone dry, but still has a little bit of fruitiness to it, and I don't know. I think it's really good. I love it actually. 9%. It's the lightest beer of the three, but it is actually really light on its feet in the way it like comes across your palate. It could be paired with a dessert, but more likely I'm going to be pairing this with like a fresher, earlier in the meal course or an appetizer. But I like it.
I think so. We'll get to tasting notes and all of our sensory stuff, but there's a few really good questions. So Ian asks, does this have similarity to Huck That Berry?
So it kind of does.
Yeah, so I'll tackle this one first, hand it off to Bell because it's actually his program. So I think one of the fun things is yes. So we have an innovation team and we have an innovation brewing system. Andrew Bell currently leads that, and a lot of times the beers that you see in these small batches and one-offs in the tasting rooms are us experimenting and playing and having fun, right? And it's Bell kind of doing stuff. So absolutely, there's some similarity, and maybe Bell can talk to this a little bit.
Yeah, so we actually made a couple different versions, and then we actually, pre-COVID, had Chef Brooke come in and taste. And we knew we wanted to do a triple with huckleberry. Two questions were, do we want to ferment out that huckleberry to complete dryness and leave it more as a Belgian-style triple would be like bone dry? Or do we want to have it back sweetened with that huckleberry to have like more of a sweet impression on the palate? The Huck That Berry was the trial where we back sweetened it with huckleberry and didn't allow those sugars to ferment out. What we decided upon and what Chef Brooke liked more was the one where it fermented all the way completely to bone dryness, which is what became the berry. So that's sort of that question. We ended up not releasing the kegs of the pilot that we liked because we didn't want to tease it too much, but we thought that the one that was back sweetened with the huckleberry was fun, so we released it as Huck That Berry in the tasting room.
I think overall the message here is make sure you go to the tasting rooms to try these experimental beers and the innovation beers because, yeah, they'll eventually, and like the goal is they turn into these beers that you love, but it's like a sneak peek almost. And kind of leaning, there was another question that Bell sort of answered. I'm looking for it here. But how much input did Chef Brooke have in the Provision series? They were all good, love the spice. I mean, I would say a good amount. She came out, she tasted. We actually used thyme from her garden in the spice, and she was pretty involved, like really involved. So she tasted. We talked about what we wanted, but again, I'll hand this one off to Bell. Let him talk a little bit about that process.
Yeah, she had a huge amount of input in both the conception, a lot in the conception of these beers, and then along the way she was able to taste and kind of pick things apart. So for the berry, she tried the pilot batches and decided the direction that would go on. For the spice, as Daniel said, like time, we were talking about doing some sort of barrel-aged stout, and we didn't want to obviously do a smaller version of Chocolate Rain. We wanted to do something different. And she suggested to put thyme in the beer with the chocolate to complement it. The thyme came from her garden. We sent her samples of vanilla beans from every origin we had, as well as cacao nibs from I think 4 or 5 different origins. She chose the ones we ended up using. So I think Keith might be able to talk more about the vine, but she specified that she wanted to collaborate with Andrew Murray and the grape varieties that she wanted to use. So she had a huge amount of input in this.
Yeah, and if you guys, I know we posted some content there, and we'll have more coming out. But we actually went up and we did wine tastings, and we actually walked through Andrew Murray's vineyards, and I just filmed it, but her and Jeremy were tasting. Or actually, Valerie filmed it. I just was there. But they were tasting grapes, and it was like it's super involved. Like this is totally a collaborative effort.
It's probably also worth mentioning if some people aren't hip to it that this is our second go around with Brooke Williamson. I think we did 2 beers last time, right? It was Girl Grey, which I know was super popular, and I think the other one was Kiri Dragon, right, on the True side.
Yep.
So she's already kind of proven that she can really knock those like interesting concept beers out of the park with us. So
Yeah, I think
and
too.
Girl,
I think
Girl Grey, there's maybe like 6 different renditions off the pilot system to get that right. It's 6, maybe 7. So
I think too. I think when you get a tastemaker like Chef Brooke and Jeremy together, you kind of have to get out of the way a little bit because they just kind of like take it and just run, and it's really amazing to see them like just talk back and forth, and they really do, because Chef Brooke, I think from the small amount of time that I've spent working with her, like she really is like super passionate about every single ingredient she's adding, and she has opinions on every single ingredient that's going through the process, and that's an amazing part of working with a collaborator that isn't there to just put their name on a label. Like she's actually there to help, and she wants to be part of this beer.
Yeah, definitely. So shout out to Chef Brooke. If you don't know who she is, look her up. She just opened like some pop-up patios at her restaurant. So look it up, go eat there. Great food. We're going to have these beers there pretty soon. But let's do a little, like a quick, we're starting to really linger on this one. Let's do a quick sensory. Who wants to handle this one? And then let's move on to the next collaboration beer.
Honestly, I think Dave back in the comments really nailed it. I mean, he really did. It's like, it's perfumey, it's bright, it's, the Belgian yeast is very forward. I get a lot of Belgian yeast on the nose as well, but it's fantastic. I mean, it's really tasting like just like a fruit. I mean, it tastes like the fruit skin. Initially, it's awesome.
I think he nailed it also. So former brewer Kevin Lara asks, any pairing recommendations? I think Bell kind of talked to some, but you want to just throw it out there? What would you pair this with, Bell?
I mean, I need some more time to think about it, but I definitely would pair it with earlier things, stuff that would help emphasize brightness, both in the beer and in the dish. I can see it. I don't know. It might take me a second. I'll probably blurt out something like 10 minutes when I think of like the pairing, but it definitely has some bright flavors, and I think that it should emphasize freshness in whatever dish you have it with.
All right, let's move on. So the next in the series is the spice. This is the stout that we've brewed, and there's actually thyme from Chef Brooke's garden in there. So the spice available now. This one will be part of a Preservation Society pack. But yeah, let's talk a little bit about the spice. Maybe start with let's start with pouring it. Doesn't look like you have it yet. The spice. All right, let's do a sensory on this one. If you guys have questions, put them in the comments. We'll start answering them. But let's go with Jake. Jake knows.
Ah man, it's just like feels like it's loaded with chocolate and vanilla, just like a kind of like almost like you get off like a black and white cookie, just like a lot of sweet notes. I'm still searching for like the time, but it might just be because I'm just getting overwhelmed with like the chocolate and vanilla. It smells amazing.
So I think that's a good call, and I think the kind of the way we were thinking about this when we've talked about it is the thyme is almost like a seasoning on a food, right? And I think Andrew Bell has a lot of input on the thyme, and what's up with the thyme, dude? What's going on with that?
Yeah,
why is it there? What does it do?
Exactly like you said, the thyme is a seasoning element, and it kind of emphasizes certain parts of the chocolate and vanilla, the spiciness that is inherent in some vanilla varieties, and the earthiness of the chocolate, and it's not really there to bang you over the head, because if it was, if you got thyme as the first thing rather than chocolate, it might be a little bit off-putting with the underlying roast, but having it as like sort of an element that weaves together the base beer, the chocolate, the vanilla, it's just that little seasoning that sort of raises and elevates the rest of the beer profile. I assure you, without the thyme in here, you would have a very, very different drinking experience. But if it was bashing over the head, the herbaceousness would clash a little. So, but yeah, it's definitely chocolate forward for sure. chocolate vanilla than the thyme.
Awesome. Damien looks really pensive right now, so I feel like he's got a lot going on up here. Damien, what are you thinking on this beer, man?
I definitely get the thyme. Thyme is like one of my favorite spices to use when cooking. So it's like no doubt there's thyme in here. I really like this beer. This is the first time I'm trying it, and this is like real joy to drink. Especially like so a couple years ago I tried to make like a Black Tuesday beer with rosemary, and I thought it came out really pretty good. And I'm just glad it's not rosemary, but it's pretty similar, and I'm really excited that we're actually using like this kind of spice in this beer. And I think it works. I really like it. I really enjoy it.
Well, you sound like a thyme expert, so I'm going to ask you, what would you pair the thyme with?
This I could see myself pairing this with like a steak, like prime rib, easily.
Yeah.
That's what I use my thyme in. Is every time I cook a steak, it's either this or rosemary, but majority it's thyme. I can see this going really well with the steak.
I would 100% agree. Like, you take a steak that you pan sear and then put butter and some thyme in the pan and baste it with it. Just like the thyme melding with like the butter in the steak, the thyme in the beer, and then like the chocolate in the beer also just going with all the melanoids, getting that like perfect crust on the steak. That's the pairing that just
What's a melanoid, dude? You got to inform me. I'm sorry, dude.
The caramelization, the crust.
Oh,
dude,
there
the
we go.
That sounds amazing, Andrew. That sounds amazing.
Yeah, we're gonna have dinner at Andrew's house next weekend. Here's a good question: did you use? So, I guess basically, is the spice a brand new beer, or is this kind of a familiar flavor profile that members might kind of recognize?
It's its own base. It's its own base. There's some So Happens It's Tuesday in it as well, but for the most part, it's its own base. I mean, flavor wise, I guess, yeah, bakery's kind of a comp to it, but no, it's a separate base.
So let me ask you a question, Andrew, because I don't know this. Was the thyme added on the hot side or the cold side?
Cold side.
Cold side addition. Okay.
Just for anybody who doesn't know what that means, what is hot side versus cold side, Andrew Bell?
Hot side would be during the boil. Cold side is anything after the boil, but for the most part, when we're talking about it, it's post fermentation. So in the finishing step, and in this case, post barrel. So in the bright tank.
Is there any reason? Is there any reason you did that instead of adding it to the warm side? Like, does the heat bring out anything that you didn't want?
I mean, there was some talk about doing it warm side, and then the sort of difference between like cooked thyme and fresh thyme, and we were going a little bit more for that fresh thyme character. So cooked thyme can come across a little weird, especially when it's with chocolate, versus fresh thyme has a little bit more herbaceousness to it, which is nice.
All right, I think that's a good spot to move on to the next collaboration beer, which is maybe one of the more exciting ones. So this one is early access for members. It will hit limited distribution. Originally, our plan was like we wanted to do some really cool dinners around the country with this beer. Who knows if that's going to happen right now, but it's still a great food beer. And so next up is the Vine. And so this is actually a beer wine hybrid, if you would. And in collaboration with Andrew Murray Vineyards, a great spot. Look them up also if you don't know who Andrew Murray is. But yeah, we actually went up and we tasted. Well, I didn't really taste them. I just watched Chef Brooke and Jeremy Sour Jesus taste them because they have the palate. But yeah, this has been a long time in the making also. And it's a pretty complex beer. Yeah. It's a pretty complex beer. So I think, I don't know, maybe Keith is a good person to start this one off. Tell us a little bit about this beer, dude.
Yeah, so I mean, that's one thing that we've been doing a lot more of in the past, let's say 4 to 5 years is wine hybrids. And that definitely comes from some inspiration from Jeremy's background as a winemaker. This beer was absolutely fun to work with and super excited that we made like a pretty good amount of it that we that I think I'll be able to get a couple bottles and the allocations won't be so low. But so we took Grenache Blanc and Viognier grapes. We bring them in. We actually do our own fermentation of these grapes in our own. We have wine pick bins, so we actually ferment inside of that. We add some of our sour blonde base to that beer so that it ferments naturally, and then we press the grapes in a wine press that's our own wine press. So we actually press the grapes and put them in barrel. And so this is I'd say our largest wine beer hybrid I think we've ever done, like in terms of volume, but it's absolutely wonderful. There's a ton of oak, a ton of vanilla characteristic on it. Fantastic.
Yeah. I got a question for you, Keith. How much skin contact time did this have before pressing?
So this was probably, I'm going to get this wrong. I'd have to go back, but it's probably a week of skin contact time.
There's definitely some like textural elements you can feel from that. And I think this beer is pretty awesome. And that's a pretty basic description of it. But
so that's one of the things too, like with wine hybrids, is we can't, like we open ferment and naturally ferment with the grape skins, like Andrew's talking about, but you don't want it to leave it and let it linger too long. You really want to get it off those grapes pretty soon after fermentation is done.
Which is, I mean, the reason why I bring it up is that's kind of an interesting process for most white wines where you're trying to press off grapes pretty soon and then just co-fermentation. But I think it adds some textural elements and some really interesting notes to it. And Grenache Blanc and Viognier are just two awesome and underappreciated white wine grapes. So I think they add a lot to it. There's so much stone fruit and brightness to this beer that's coming across from the grapes. It's fun.
All right, so again, like these are made for pairing with food. Who wants to be on the spot? Let's go with Damien.
He helped make this beer. He makes this beer. So
what are you gonna pair this with, man? I really love the steak comment. I love the thyme, the rosemary. Like, what are you gonna pair this with, though?
This one, I'm thinking just like straight cheese. Like,
cheese.
Like a
a funky, like a really funky, like
just like a funky cheese, like like a good aged Parmesan. Like, that's all. It's an amazing beer. It's super funky, but you also get you get the honeysuckle, you get that tangerine flavor from the Viognier. I also think that's like an underrated varietal as well. I love it. I love just that simple like Viognier wine, and I think this represents that grape really well. That's what I would go with.
Yeah, I agree on the Viognier. Like, man, you could really get. I think this is one of the more complex hybrids that we've done, actually. Like, there was just so much like nuance. You could totally pick out the actual grape varietals 100% on this, especially the Viognier. I thought was kind of like really driving it. That's a good call for a pairing. And now we have a question. I don't know who the best person to answer this is, but this is on Untapped as a grape ale. That might be wrong, but how was the grain bill tweaked to account for the amount of grapes that would be added?
I'll take it.
All right.
So I think like when you're talking about grain bill, the grain bill really wasn't tweaked, but the fermentation yeast profile was tweaked. So that lends it to not be like, we did not pitch it with our house sour culture. So this is really fermented with some natural yeast and some of our clean yeast. So this beer isn't very acidic. It's not very sharp. It's more of like a wine. Drinks more like a wine with a heavier body. So it's more about the fermentation profile and the speed of fermentation than the actual grain bill.
Yeah, I think I was about to point out Chris's comment like risotto. I could see this working really well with a rich risotto. Think of this as like a super full body intense white that's not a Chardonnay. Like it has oak and it has like richness. I was almost
Something
thinking
with a
like,
butteriness to it, like we were saying with the richness.
yeah, I was almost thinking like Boudin Blanc or even a Cassoulet maybe. Like big, rich, heavy, still white wine associated dishes. But yeah, this is tasty.
Awesome. Okay, I think I'm not seeing any more questions come in, but I think this is actually a great transition to the next beer. So we actually have good amount of beer wine hybrids dropping this month, right? So next up is a pretty special beer, and I think it's actually really unique to anything we've done before. So next we're going to talk about Elevage, and so this is kind of inspired by, and if any of you are fans of dessert wine, so port or like an ice wine, this is a really rich, viscous, sweet, just big body on this beer. So Elevage beer wine hybrid, as you can see here, Roussanne grape, and this one, I think it's Sanliege. I don't remember who we got the grapes from. Maybe Keith.
Sanliege.
Sanliege. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, Kurt.
Central Coast.
But yeah, so next up, Elevage. This one is this was a big project, and I think there was a lot of love put into this. And as you can hear, Andrew opening it. Yeah, let's talk about Elevage. So, Keith, if you kind of want to walk us through the inspiration, like what is this? What did we intend to do with this, and then process, and then we'll get into some tasting notes.
Yeah, for sure. I actually, though, I do kind of want to maybe put this on a little bit on Andrew. I know he's muted right now, but he kind of has a better story of like Elevage and like the process that is Elevage. But when it comes to talking about Teru and like our process, like I'm definitely down to talk about that. But I think Andrew can explain the whole Elevage process a little bit better.
Yeah, so the concept, as far as I know it, of Elevage in French winemaking is kind of, it differs. So let's take a step back. The big French wine term you hear and think about is terroir, which is showcasing the raw material, the grapes, and where they came from, the soil that they came from. Elevage is almost like a polar opposite. It is actually showcasing what the winemaker and the people did to manipulate but elevate the beer. So cellar processes, wood, barrel aging, blending. It's how the raw material was manipulated, but in a positive way to elevate it. So that is my understanding of the concept of Elevage in French winemaking. Is how the raw material, the grape, was elevated by the person making the wine.
Right. So what we did at the brewery to elevate and kind of make it more of our own barrel aging process, we actually took. So typically with our wine beer hybrids, we take some wort, which is not fermented, so unfermented beer, right? So we take the wort and then we co-ferment that with the sugars that are in the grapes. So this, we actually took some already fermented Belgian triple in bourbon barrels, and then we added that to the grapes that were pressed, and that is what's carrying over the sweetness to this beer, as well as the late harvest Roussanne grapes. So those late harvest, meaning they stayed out in the sun longer than normal, so they kind of turned into like mini raisins, not quite full on raisins, but like kind of raisins. So they're super sweet, right? Because the moisture content is pulled out. They're really sweet, and we actually pressed that into basically our sour triple. We took that beer, blended it together, and then bourbon barrel aged that, and that's where we're at. So this beer is probably one of the sweetest out of Teru. Now, when I say that, it's not sweet when you think about normal beer. It's the sweetest out of a sour and wild facility. So this sits around 3.2 degree Plato for any homebrewers out there that kind of know what that means. So it's a little bit higher sugar content. Pretty exciting. to make this beer. It's something pretty unique right now. There's no real sharpness to it. There's no strong acidity. It's really like a sweet grape sour triple that, I don't know, tasted fantastic.
I mean, it has the acidity that a good dessert wine would have, which is exactly what this comes across as. So, I mean, dessert wines are sweet and they need some acid to balance. And this does not come across as acidic, despite there being acid in it. It's just decadent, like decadent dessert wine. And it's very cool. It's hugely expressive.
So this is another one that we had a lot of fun with too, with the packaging. I see some comments about the packaging. So this one was also quite a day. Daniel actually got his hands in packaging this one. It's kind of exciting to have Daniel come over and help us package this. Damien's honestly the guy when it comes to packaging these bottle types, like all these fancy bottle types that are coming out of the brewery. That's Damien. I mean, he's running the machine, and it's very hands-on. It's a very, not going to say stressful, but it's a high-stress day other than normal packaging day. So it's really fun. It's really unique, and I'm glad we could do it.
Very romantic beer. Very hands-on with this beer. This is a beer I will definitely remember for the rest of my life. Enjoy it. It's a great beer. I love this beer. I love the bottling. First time ever using this bottle, and it was a challenge, but we definitely got through it. And I'm very stoked on how it came out. And it looks awesome. It tastes awesome. I love this beer.
Keith, do you know if the grapes went through botrytis at all, or were they
what?
through botrytis, like noble rot, or were they just?
Honestly, I do not know. That would be a Sour J question.
I'm curious.
Let's do a Kevin Lara question. So Kevin Lara, former brewer. What's up, Kevin? Sounds really rad. Do you think it's something that might develop with age?
Absolutely. That's why you should buy a case now. Buy 2 cases. You drink a case now, drink a case later.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And if you are thinking about a case, do it now. There's not a lot of this beer.
It's really not.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't know the limits. I don't know all the rules when it comes to
I don't either.
Like,
Do you know like
I'm
how
getting mine.
this beer is available to and everything?
It's pretty low. I tried to get Connor on, who would have all these answers, but he's busy setting up the sale for tomorrow. I believe this is Hoarders in Reserve. Well, let me just look. You guys talk. Give me a few minutes here to just look at that.
so what do you think, Jake?
I mean, you were part of the team that made it, so I'm not going to say anything else, but it's phenomenal. No, I'm just kidding. It is a really good beer. It's one of those ones that obviously, like, this is still correct. I don't know if we mentioned that or not, but I mean, so it's.
Oh no, you got a flat bottle? What?
No, it is a good point to bring up, though. It is a good point to bring up because it is a still beer, and there will be some people that try and they're like, "Well, it's kind of flat." It's like, well, it is supposed to be still. Good point. Yeah,
Do not get a faulty bottle. It's still.
So it is Hoarders in Reserve. So Hoarders on sale tomorrow, and then the following day, Reserve Society. And that's it. Yeah, small batch. On that note, not seeing, well, this is a cool comment, so we'll put it up there. But let's move on to the next beer. So next up is kind of another, I guess, legacy brand. It keeps evolving, but we've done a few versions of this beer before. I don't have a really cool photo of it yet because it's not. So this is one that actually won't be available tomorrow. It's still in process, if you would. It will be available later in the month. So like we always like to say, beer, part science, part art. The art isn't ready yet. So in a few weeks, this will be available. It's included this month for a few groups. So if it's included in your membership group, it will be available to you later this month. We'll keep you up to date. But let's go ahead and taste through this one. The next up is Still Vindictive. And if you're on Beer Advocate and looking at our forum, you may have noticed a small misspelling on the label. But let's just talk about the beer. This is about the beer.
Let's just say it's not production's fault.
Yeah. This isn't about the label. This is about the beer. Let's talk about the beer.
So yeah, this beer is sort of in the same mindset of what we were doing a couple of years ago with the Vindictive and Winification series. This one is a Black Tuesday co-ferment with Malbec grapes from the Fabulous. But this took a little different path to get to us as far as the liquid in the glass. It has spent time in a huge variety of barrels. It's been in new American oak, used French oak puncheons, American apple brandy barrels, as well as bourbon barrels. But it is more along the lines of Vindictive and Winification in that it shows a Black Tuesday character to it, but it is packaged still or flat, sort of like the Rutherford series. But it doesn't have the same grape intensity, nor did we intend it to have the same grape intensity as the two Rutherford bottlings. So it's sort of an interesting, I don't know how to describe it, sort of an interesting hybrid between the two lines
So this-
of clean beer hybrids.
This is the first time we've done Vindictive still, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. So I mean that's going to add a lot of different flavors,
Mhm.
or lack of carbonic acid will, add a lot more layers. So
Yeah, it changes it. And this Malbec that we got from Paso is it's on the riper side. It's a little bit almost meaty to it in a positive way. But it's a very interesting project, and it's very different than what we have going on with the Rutherford series, and still a little bit different than some of the Winification Vindictive beers that we've been doing. So, Keith, you want to give some notes, or Jake, or Damien?
What's the ABV on this one, by the way?
doesn't matter.
I don't want to talk out of turn. Daniel might be able to pull it up, but
Yeah,
I'm positive it's above. It should be above 15.
there's definitely an ABV on this. Let's keep talking tasting notes, and we'll get right back to the ABV.
Yeah, I think that's one thing. Like at the brewery, we really don't focus on like style or on ABV, right? We're really more about the flavor and how it impacts
Who's
the
so style?
So I mean, like the ABV is kind of tough to. Honestly, I don't. After I turn in ABV for our labels, like I don't really remember what the ABV is, but
Yeah.
It actually it's 15.8, so it's a big beer.
session beer,
Yeah,
It's one of those big
brewery
boy-
session.
Yeah, it's one of those big boy Paso Malbecs meets Black Tuesday, and then aged in
yeah.
a multitude of barrels, including brandy and bourbon.
So I don't know if we talked to this one already, but Still Vindictive. What's up with Still Vindictive? Why is it Still Vindictive?
I already covered this while you're out.
We covered it. Still, yeah.
Yeah, it's still it's flat. It's not carbonated, and it's along the lines of the former Vindictive Winification series, in that it showcases a little bit more of the Black Tuesday, the beer bit, rather than the Rutherford projects, which are much more those taste straight up like wine, and this has some underlying base beer character to it.
So here's a good question. Talking to both of those brands, how long can you age the Rutherfords and Vindictive wine hybrids?
I would assume quite a while.
How long would you age it for, Bill? Like, if it was sitting in your cellar, when are you going to be like, all right, I got to drink this?
Well, if you haven't had it before, you should obviously have one bottle first, and then you should figure out how you want to age it. And the safest way, if you can, to go about that is to open one every year or so. But I don't know. I've had some of the early Winifications Vindictives, and they're not showing any age at this point, to be honest. So, and which is not entirely surprising. These are Black Tuesdays that have been co-fermented. So Black Tuesday, which the 2009 Black Tuesday is still tasting awesome. And they're co-ferments with these big, intense red grape varieties from either Napa or from Central Coast, which also can age for decades. So we don't know how long it will age, but we have not come to the point where it's starting to go downhill on even the earliest of the projects. So I think they could easily age safely for 5 years. But if you haven't tried the specific beer, you should drink one now and have at least one to age. So
Has everybody in your little group here had the 2009 Black Tuesday?
yeah, I still got a couple bottles.
Not recently,
Yeah.
but yeah.
I had it like 2 years
That
ago.
still holds up.
Yeah.
Yeah, last time
So
I
I
had
still had
last time I had it was a year and a half ago. It was still spectacular.
amazing.
But I think too with these grape hybrid, like these wine hybrids, like I've had like Toro was a really good example of a wine hybrid that a year later it tasted absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
2 years later it tasted absolute like wonderful. So I mean you like
And another
aging.
still beer as well.
It's what's up?
It's another still beer as well.
Oh, right.
It was,
Yeah.
So I mean it's really really a lot of science that goes behind aging beer.
There you go. There you go.
All right. Let's. I don't see any more questions coming in. You guys want to transition over to the stouts? Make the move. Go to these bigger beers.
Big boys.
Right. So first, is that okay? So first beer that we're going to talk about, another fun one because this one was actually, I think Bell, you were on, right? So this was conceived. The concept was built on a live stream. We were with Derek from Moxa, and we were with Mike from Microphone, and we just kind of decided, hey, let's do a virtual collaboration. Three's Company was what came out of that, and so this is just like a big stout with coconut, vanilla beans, milk sugar, oat milk. But it was like the idea for the beer and the inspiration was totally built off of this live stream that maybe some of you guys watched. So pretty fun beer, pretty fun to make it with those guys virtually. Bell, you want to talk to the inspiration, maybe what we were thinking of when we were on the live stream and then how we turned that into a beer?
Yeah. So for those who didn't watch the live stream or those who need a reminder, we determined from a pastry stout perspective that we want to go for the pastry that is the coconut cream pie. And to do so, we talked about a couple of different techniques. One, using an absolutely insane amount of coconut, 1 pound per gallon, of which 75% of that would be raw or fresh coconut to bring the sort of tropical character to it. And then 25% of that was toasted coconut that we hand toasted, which still, even at 25% at 1 pound per gallon, is metric F ton of coconut. And then to get some more of that creaminess of the coconut cream pie, we used a combination of, I believe, Madagascar and Tahitian vanilla to just bring some extra spice to it. We don't use a ton of Tahitian at our brewery, but that was a fun concept. And then sort of building body in this beer. And one of the weird things that we actually picked up from Mike was that on another beer that he did, he used oat milk in the kettle to create some more body. So we brewed a 7-barrel batch of coconut milk to inject into our kettle. And it's intense. There's a good amount of coconut. The good amount is being subtle. There's a lot of coconut in this beer. And what I really actually like the most about it, it's not barrel aged at all, despite being 11.3, but it has like this awesome intense mouthfeel. It was just a super fun project. I miss hanging out with those guys on a pretty regular basis at festivals this time of year. Obviously, festivals and collabs for most brewers have been pretty much shut down, so it was really good to hang out, chat with them virtually, and come up with a beer. And I'm sure, Daniel, I meant to remind you, but hopefully you have some care packages on your way to both Mike and Derek with this beer in it.
No, we don't like sending collaborators beers. We're gonna hold on to these. No, yeah, we're. If you guys are watching, probably not, but we are sending a beer. Another not interesting, but a fact about this beer. So the bottles will be available to the Preservation Society. So it's part of the pack for this quarter. So if you're not a member and you want to try this beer, you can join, and it's included in your membership package. For current members, cans will be available starting tomorrow for hoarders, following day for reserve, following day for current Preservation Society members. And then this
is one of the 4 beers.
This is one of the 4 beers in the Preservation Society pack. So
this is worth it on the price of admission alone, right here.
Yeah,
it's
so much coconut.
Fantastic.
Talk to the beers. So this month's beers are 4 Preservation Society pack, Threeska Company, The Spice, Train to Beer School, and Tart of Darkness. So it's actually this is like one of our better. Not that every package isn't good, but this is a pretty exciting Preservation Society package.
It's fantastic.
And what about the cans, Daniel?
So cans are for members. So cans are gonna go on sale again tomorrow for members. For hoarders tomorrow. Following day for reserve. Following day for Preservation Society members. So you can stock up on the beer. We will see bottles go public a little bit later. Those were kind of packaged just for the Preservation Society box. But cans are going to be ready to go starting tomorrow. Here's a cool question. Probably Bell's a good guy to talk to this one. What different flavors do you feel you get from using toasted coconut versus raw coconut? Sometimes I feel coconut beers have a sunscreen-like character that they are coconut heavy, but haven't found that. That's because we use real coconut, but haven't found that in brewery beers. Is there anything you do to specifically combat that? We use real coconut, but Bell, take this one.
We don't use any sunscreen. That's true.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Not
I
yet.
feel like I got sunburned this weekend, but yeah. So fresh coconut has like that huge, like tropical, almost like the pina colada side of the coconut character to it. You get all that tropical fruit. Toasted has this really nice caramel vanilla thing going on to it, and Banana Boat sunscreen is artificial coconut flavoring or natural coconut flavoring, and we don't use that in our beers. So the reason why we don't get sunscreen flavor in our beers is because we're not using coconut extract. We use fresh coconut if we're going for the tropical side, toasted coconut if we're going for that caramel, like deep warmth character of the coconut, and then you use them in combination and you get something that contains both, and it becomes pretty awesome. But yeah, that's sort of the thing. I'm just so impressed with the mouthfeel of this beer, though. I don't know what you all think.
Tell us about it. What are you impressed with?
I want these guys to talk.
Well, I mean, I'll tell you right off the bat, like for me, and I don't want to like seem like I'm like a Andrew Bell sycophant, but I can tell you that I've always thought, for as good as we're obviously well known for our barrel aging program, we do an amazing job, if not the best job, with the barrel aging program. But I've always thought that the heavier beers that we put out that aren't barrel aged, like I think about like Island Time and some of the iterations of Gewürztraminer maybe, like they're just always so phenomenal. They do a great job of imparting all the flavors without ever getting cloying or over the top, and they manage to have like a really enjoyable, like creamy body to them as well. I don't know, you just knocked it out of the park with this one, man. I think, like I said, this is worth the PS pack alone right here. So
yeah, this beer was a pain to make, and I really appreciate the team behind it. Like, let alone toasting all that coconut, like adding it in multiple doses, and figuring out how to get this thing along. This was a fun but challenging project, and I really do appreciate the team's effort in getting this right. So it's
the smell of the brew house when you're walking through on like a toasting day, man. It's like wow. Like you walk in even before you go in, when you're just walking through like the back area and you're like on that alley. Holy moly, man! You can just smell so much coconut in the air, and so it's pretty amazing. You have so many cokes.
I think the expertise of toasting coconut is like Darren, right? So Darren, our director of brewing operations or VP of brewing operations, and he came from Maui Brewing, and they did a ton of toasted coconut porter. So like he really brought that with us and helped us like elevate that toasted coconut game. So
Yeah.
props.
he was pretty
Passionate.
pretty useful in like, oh yeah, it's way easier to rent an oven. It's like a commercial oven rather than hand toasting coconut. But yeah, no, Darren's a huge advocate for toasted coconut, and it's both have their place. I think both raw and toasted, depending on what you're doing. But yeah, he's like, yeah, of course we can rent an oven. Like, oh, cool. That makes it a lot easier to do a couple 100 pounds to a couple 1,000 pounds of toasted coconut. But yeah, apparently Maui's just like set up for toasting coconut like all day, every day. So it's interesting.
How many ovens do you have to hook up to toast all that coconut? It's just one, right?
We've done 2 sometimes, but we just run that one oven for 24 hours a day, constantly feeding it.
It's
Or
pretty
sometimes
exciting.
40 hours.
And that's why it's fun
So
to work at the brewery.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
a commercial oven. Usually there's like 4 levels where you can put a full sheet tray on, which don't usually fit in most home ovens, and toasting times anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes, depending on whatever the temperature is. And we literally have Sellerman 24 hours a day running the oven. So depends on how much we're trying to do. But
So this is like maybe.
shout out to Tom who asked the question, by the way, who's at Voodoo. Right.
What's up, Tom from Voodoo? Here's kind of a loaded question. You have so many coconut stouts. What's the difference between them? I don't know if this is asking like process or taste, but just to think of a few this year, like Aloha Friday, Island Time.
That's since Black Tuesday base.
So
So like to that point, like the difference between them is really going to be like the base beer, right? I mean, we craft a concept and then we craft a beer around that. So I mean, it's
flavor driven.
always going to be different. Yeah, it's flavor driven. So I mean, it's always going to be a little bit different between beers, and like we're not, a lot of, and I hate to say it, like it's going to sound mean, but anyway, but like a lot of like small breweries that they just take the same base beer and they just put a bunch of shit in it. But like that's not what we're doing here. Like we're really thinking about the end concept and how to get there, and you can't do that with the same base beer. You just can't. So that's a very point of difference.
Yeah, it's all based on they're all different, even though a lot of them might share coconut as like one of the primary ingredients, but it's really what we're trying to get out of flavor wise. We think about the flavor first and then figure out the underlying beer. So they're not all going to be just here's a coconut beer. It's like, oh, we're trying to get in Aloha Friday, it's like the macadamia coconut combo. Here we're going for coconut cream pie. Bakery, we're going for coconut macaroon. So they're all the recipes are all changed to hit those flavor marks rather than just like this is stout with coconut. It's kind of thinking about it from a different angle.
Yeah, I think it's not just we're not just throwing adjuncts in. They're like the concept is inspired, and we're trying to hit something, as opposed to just like, oh, like coconut's cool, let's toss it into a beer. It's like, no, we want this to taste like a macaroon, or we want this to taste like coconut cream pie. So it's more focused. That being said, I'm not seeing any more questions, so we're gonna move on.
Have we used jackfruit in beer before? Yes, we have.
Oh, what beer?
Hummus lager with jackfruit that I did like 8 years ago. It was like a treatment keg. Not 8 years, 7 years ago, 6 years ago. Yeah,
Just go back in time.
It was about 7 years ago. It was before I started working here, and I was a reserve member.
21. Jake wasn't even 21 some years ago.
If any of you guys have tried that, let us know in the comments. We'll put you up there because I don't know that anybody up here has tried that before.
I did.
Well,
I remember trying
all right,
I made it.
let's move. We made it. Well, not we,
So,
but
sorry. That was like one of those. It was a cask. It was a cask. Someone put liquid in the cask with the fruit.
all right. Last beer. Well, not last beer, but last beer that we have to taste. So this is another legacy beer. This is a big one. So the label looks great. The beer's great. Chocolate Rain, The Return. So it's a legacy beer. I think one of the fun things this year is we went back to Cho Nib this year. So a preferred vendor. We moved away from them last year, and then this year we really liked their cacao. So went back to it. This year's actually drinking pretty crazy, but I'll again let the pros talk to what's going on there. And this one is available again to hoarders and Reserve Society members. A little bit of a smaller batch this year, so I just suggest purchasing early if you're worried about getting whatever you want. Like, go for it quickly. But yeah, why don't we start with our most tenured brewer, Andrew Bell. Tell us about the legacy of this beer, and then let's get into what this year's is drinking like.
Yeah, I want to hear tasting notes from the others afterwards, but as far as the background on the beer and what's different this year, background on the beer is this is the first variant of Black Tuesday that was in Black Tuesday. And it was a cask at the original Black Tuesday party with just cacao and vanilla in it. And it has since evolved. I believe we made it in the bottle again in 2010 for the first time, might have been 2011. But it's been a mainstay of our portfolio. And the main difference this year is the technique of adding the vanilla and the cacao nibs, and also just way extending the contact time on the chocolate. Outside of barrel, so taking out a barrel into just a bulk holding tank and letting it sit on cacao and vanilla for, I want to say, better part of 3 months, if not a little bit longer, with some rousing in it. And that just pulled out so much more chocolate and vanilla flavors. I think this, despite it being maybe a little hot on the ethanol, I think this might be my favorite batch of Chocolate Rain that we've done. As Chocolate Rain, not including the REIGN version, but
Chocolate Rain.
Chocolate Rain.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear tasting notes from everyone else. This is a chocolate bomb.
Chocolate Rain. Not
Yeah,
chocolate
Rain. I feel like we haven't heard from Jake in a minute. So Jake, give us your.
I don't have my glass ready yet. My dedicated beer wench is pouring it right now off screen.
Oh.
Rain.
Yeah.
All right,
And to get me one of those.
let's move over to Damien.
What do you got?
What's Damien got to say?
I don't have one of those, so I poured myself. Definitely chocolatey. Definitely get back to the Cho chocolate. I'm a big fan of theirs. Definitely tastes like the boldness, the roastiness. Chocolate Rain is definitely a beer that you don't mess around with. Definitely got to share. 19.1% for this year. That's to finish this tasting off. This is a good beer. It's definitely gonna
Yeah, so it's a
good
big.
tonight.
I think one of the fun things to talk about is, I think Andrew kind of touched on it, but like heat wise, like, what are you getting as far as heat and alcohol? Because it's huge, right? It's a massive beer, but I think that we did it. I mean, like, I just don't pick up like the alcohol on it.
I agree. You definitely. I remember just with like past Black Tuesdays in general, it's like pretty hot beer. This one's actually pretty well balanced for just being really about to be released. Usually, you gotta wait a little bit before you can actually bottle.
So you're saying drink fresh. I like that.
I love. Yeah, it's just like this is good to go. It's ready.
Keith looks like he's got something to say. His eyes are very serious right now. Like, he's got a lot to say about this beer.
Yeah, I do. I have a lot to say. I think there has been some years that are like warmer. Everybody's saying that, but goddamn, if this beer doesn't taste fucking awesome right now, like,
Uh-oh.
yeah,
That's mellow. Dude, it's a super mellow beer for being 19% and fresh out of the oven, without a doubt.
and I think
for years the BT recipe has been dialed in, so there's not like a bunch of like residual heat coming off. No, that's awesome. That's killer smooth.
So here's a question I'll take, and we've seen it a few times. So this year, again, it's a pretty small batch. So we're only doing bottles, 750 milliliter. if you guys like the cans, throw us some, like, just let us know in the comments, because we actually really value your input, and we will take all this to heart. And if that's something we want on these bigger releases, we'll definitely do it again. But this year, small batch, so only space for 750 milliliter bottles. So we saw this a few times. Here's another question. Hey, I did the unthinkable. These offshoot beer glass. Yes, you can buy them, I believe, on both the brewery and the offshoot website, and the tasting rooms have them also.
Yeah, that's the worst.
On that.
If somebody else breaks your glass, that's the worst.
Especially when they're no longer in stock or just they're not making them anymore. But we still have those.
All right, let's see what other comments we got going on here. Dave.
Honestly, this beer is so smooth for 19.1%.
Yeah.
Man. It's incredible.
I can't even imagine how it's going to taste like after a year. Like, that's usually when I'll wait.
I think too, it's vintages like this that really like remind you how good, like, I hate to say it like this, but how good the brewery is at making these barrel-aged stouts. Like, this is 19.1%. Man, it's so good.
Yeah.
So, Andrew, here's a question for you. Is this version of Chocolate Rain going to get turned into Chocolate like Rain, REIGN?
I mean, it's hard to translate. Is this version? I think some of the thoughts and like techniques that we use to get like this insane chocolate flavor on here will be used in making next year's Chocolate Rain.
Dude, you just gave
and some of the same barrels.
Chocolate Rain again next year? What?
Oh,
Maybe.
Did I misspeak? Let's speak out to me.
So this year, instead of confusing you guys with Rain and Rain, we're doing Gray Monday and Gray Monday. So that's coming out
For this year, but maybe next year.
maybe next year. Who knows?
That's what I was saying.
Let's
Who
see.
knows?
You can't put Andrew on the spot. Like, that's tough.
Yeah, my job is working on like beers for like next year and the year after. Like I barely know what's going on this year. It's
Right.
going on.
Like, that ain't
I'm getting attention to.
Questions all the time at SSC. Everybody's always curious as to what the next beer that's going to be triple barrel aged is. So,
Gray Monday will be. I just did something slightly hedonistic on my end that I put in our private chat, but for those who are lucky enough, Chocolate Rain mixed with Three's Company or Coke Company is fucking amazing. It's so good.
I did Sorrento and Sans Jose Reserve. That was pretty fucking good too.
I'm gonna try that later, but Chocolate Rain, I'd say like 2/3 Three's Coke Company and 1/3 Chocolate Rain is insane.
All right.
So throw in some oat milk. Ooh, baby.
Those are all the beers we have to taste right now. We're going to talk about one more beer. Kind of just concept, let you guys know it's coming out. If you have any questions, now's the time to ask them. They don't have to be about these beers. You can ask Andrew what it's like to be in the brew house. Keith, what's it like to be at Taru? Like, ask anything. We'll try to get to them. But the last beer, yeah, ask Andrew like what books he's got back there. Ask Keith the same thing. But so the last beer that we're putting out, it's not ready yet. It's coming mid-month, but we'll be releasing Black is Beautiful, which is a new collaboration beer we're doing. It's a pretty massive imperial oatmeal stout. We're personally going to be supporting the OC Black Chamber, which is just a minority education supporting group in Orange County. Yeah, if you guys, I haven't tasted it. It's actually not even ready to taste, right? So Andrew, if you want to talk about the beer.
Yeah, it's cold crashed and fermenter, ready to be transferred over to Bright for packaging. I'm very glad that we're supporting this project. It's definitely Weathered Souls, I believe, is the brewery that sort of outlined the recipe for this, and it's very different than what we normally do as a brewery as far as like our stout. Our stouts are mostly about highlighting either barrel or adjuncts, the adjunct being additional flavors. And this is a pretty straightforward stout with actually some hop character that's noticeable to it, which is different than us. So it's fun. It doesn't taste like a standard brewery beer, and I think that's an interesting and cool element to it. So I'm looking forward to it. And it's less alcohol than a couple of these other ones. So that's it's a low alcohol stout for us at like 10%. So
It's a crusher.
but yeah, but it has a little bit of hop character to it, which is a little bit different. It's also kind of roast forward for us, so it's cool. I'm excited for it.
So that beer is going to be available tentatively. Don't hold me to this, but we're planning on a 7/16 to 7/18 release date, so mid-month. It's going to be in cans. It's going to be available to members, to the public. This is just a general direct-to-consumer release. So you'll be able to buy it online. You'll be able to buy it at the tasting rooms. So it's a pretty fun project. We're happy to support it, and we're excited for it. But here's the real thing: start asking us any questions you have. Again, in the comments, we're going to start just going for it. We're pushing an hour and a half here, so we never keep the happy hour. It's always like happy 2 hours. But let's start answering some questions. So I'm going to go through these and just pull some up. You guys pick who wants to answer them. But here's the first one. Shane's Frog. I'm assuming it's pronounced like frog. Have you ever lab tested your sours to check acidic versus lactic acid levels? If so, what were the results?
Yeah, so we've actually never lab tested them, but acetic acid is one of those acids that we're really familiar with on the sour side, and that we really try to get away from. Sans Uchar variants. That's one of the ones that we're pretty much against all acetic acid as a brewery group, but Uchar variants, like, it's acceptable, right? So Flemish Red is acceptable to have some acetic acid in it. We've never actually tested it, but so there are no results. Most of the acid comes from lactic acid production, and that's basically what we test for.
Yeah, I know we've done a couple, like way back in the day. We did a couple, like doing TTA, titratable acidity with different. Basically, you do titratable acidity in grams per liter of X acid. Which in most cases, is lactic. We have done it before, but those were a long time ago. Just very small.
Yeah, well, we actually. So I don't know if you know this, Andrew. We actually still do titratable acidity on every beer. But the method that we run is actually only for lactic acid.
Yeah, it's for lactic.
Well, it's for an assumed lactic acid, right?
Yeah, we've done it before with assumed acetic as well, like way back in the day. But that's not something we do on a regular basis.
Yeah,
that was a trial like a long time ago. I think before Teru was even like a thing.
but that is something that we stray away from. Like, we do not want acetic acid in our beer. We don't. Some Belgians love it. Personally, I don't.
No, it's something we want to steer away from.
Let's. I have a couple good questions.
If you aim for any sort of acetic acid, like intentional, you're going to get too much. So it's something you should steer away from, just in general.
All right, here's a quick one, and everyone's going to answer this one. You get 30 seconds. Mary Jane Duck asks, "What was your gateway craft beer?" So, what was the beer that just went like, "Oh shit, this is different. This is something I love. I want to do this." Jake, start us off. Then we'll go to Andrew, then Damien, then Keith.
Can we kind of do both of those questions, because she's got two questions back to back, and that
We will. I wanted to do that one after.
Oh, sorry, Dan.
Just super quick. Gateway beers for me. There's on the sour side.
Nope. You get one answer, dude. One answer. It's not sour.
Okay, fine, sure. Well, I'll say Petrus. Like, my brother, like 10 years ago, took me to a craft beer shop in Wilmington, North Carolina. we got Petrus and some other brands on sour beers. Never had them before, and never even considered the fact that that could be something that would be considered a beer. Just blew my mind, and the fact that I enjoyed it like 10 times more than I'd ever enjoyed another beer, like let me know that I was probably entering into a world that I was going to dig. So definitely Petrus for sure.
It's a great answer. Let's go to Andrew Bell. I think he's answered this a few times on this live stream, but let's hear it again.
Let's see if it's again. Same thing.
Chimay Blue. Yeah. Chimay Blue to celebrate getting a fake ID, getting the A3 pack,
You
and
started big, dude.
yeah, and trying Chimay Blue. I'd had like Sierra Nevada Pale Ale and like Boston Lager and stuff like that before, but trying Chimay Blue for the first time, be like, whoa, what is this? So
Damo hit it.
It was Delirium Tremendous. Delirium was just that beer that was just like, man,
Freaking
starting
huge
like
beers to start.
yeah. It was at Yard House. I was like, oh, let me check out this one. It was this Pink Elephant. Like, let me try it out. And it was just so refreshing. It was like really hot that day too. Just very bubbly. It was very lively.
That was
one of the
refreshing?
beers.
Yeah.
Huh?
All right. That's a refreshing 10%er. All right.
Yeah, it's good.
right.
Doesn't taste like it.
Keith, what do you got?
Yeah, so I kind of come from the land of zero craft beer in 2007, 2008. So Sam Adams was my first craft beer that I absolutely loved. I drank a bunch of beer in high school and college that I just didn't care for, but it was available. It was free. So, but yeah, the first beer that I actually tasted and loved was Sam Adams Boston Lager, and I was just like, wow, like beer is something that can actually have some kind of flavor and some really strong aromatics to it, and yeah.
Nice. I'll hit this one too because I can answer this one. It was like I don't know if you guys have had Lost Coast, but Downtown Brown. There was like a brown ale that just I'd never had anything like that before. I was like right out of college, and it was always like big, just like lagers and macro beers, and having like a brown ale. Just I remember it blowing my mind, and I think that like I just have like a taste for those like dark, big beers. That's,
whose dog is that?
holy, yeah, Downtown Brown blew my mind when I tried it. All right, so let's go to the next question. What was your first job in the craft beer industry? Keith seemed like he really wanted to answer this one. Let's start with Keith.
First job was at Abita Brewing in New Orleans. It was as a brewer trainee. I was 22 years old. I was the youngest brewer trainee. Actually had my favorite beer glass here. It was an old throwback to them. And that was my first job in the craft beer industry. It was very eye-opening to understanding craft beer. We were putting out, when I left, we were putting out like 200,000 barrels a year. Just in reference, I think we're going to put out like 15,000 barrels this year at the brewery. So yeah, it's a very different size operation, but it also taught me a lot of skills that really allowed me to, make the beer that we're doing here. But yeah, it was Abita in New Orleans.
Shout out Abita. Damo, hit us.
It was actually 6 years ago today. It was with this company. Started out in the warehouse, doing inventory, doing tasting room orders, just moving beer around. And about 2 years after that, Sour J and Keith gave me a shot up and to move up to the big leagues, move up to Teru.
You did that, dude. You did that, bro.
And we did that. Learned a lot. Definitely learned a lot. I love it. I'm never disappointed to go to work. Awesome job. Get to work with beer. Get to make some stuff that all of you guys in here get to enjoy.
Andrew Bell. Also, can we wait before we do that? Everyone, cheers, Damien. 6 years.
Cheers.
Thank you.
All right, Bell, hit us, man.
Congrats, Damien.
Thank you, Mary Jane.
Dang.
As far as like production, like brewing experience, my first thing was at Bison Brewing up in Berkeley. Won a pro-am with them and brewed some beer with them. So I'd say Bison and then the brewery. I did a little bit of beer writing before that, but production-wise at Bison, which is I still believe there still exists, but an all-organic brewery in Berkeley, California.
Is that a Dan? Do you know? Was that Dan?
Yeah, Dan
Oh.
Grande.
Yeah, I know Dan.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Won a pro-am competition doing an organic, what would be now known as a session IPA, which didn't exist at the time, is like an XPA using New Zealand hops, which I had to buy from a homebrew store in New Zealand because they weren't imported in the U.S. at the time. And then once I won, Dan also found out that they were not imported to the U.S. at the time, so he had to actually order them from New Zealand, which he was kind of pissed off about. But yeah, it was a fun experience.
That's awesome, man. Jake,
Here, I guess it's been almost 2.5 years. I made a conscious decision to switch to get a job in the craft beer industry because it just seemed like such a cool industry, which, shocker it is. And I basically had an opportunity to become a junior brewer with one company or hop on with the brewery, and I chose the brewery. And 2.5 years later, I'm pretty stoked that I did.
Nice.
We are too.
Yeah, awesome, man.
I think this is a good one. So David Falby, this is a two-parter, but he's asking, what do the different general flavor notes mean on sours? For example, when sour is bright or funky, what do those mean? So I think that's a great question because we do, like even today, we talked about sharp versus tart versus funky versus wild. So I don't know, maybe Keith or Bell, you're a good one to take the lead on this, but they are very different. So like wild is kind of a general descriptor. And then when we get into taste, like when we talk about sharp versus tart, those are also super different, and funky is also a different flavor profile. So yeah, Keith.
Yeah.
Do you want to start on that, or?
This is a loaded.
Yeah, I'll start. Why not? So I think like bright is kind of like a general description for beer, right? So like for me, bright would be anything that is like highly carbonated, very thin, super effervescent, like anything that really pops into your nose. Like a stout would not be bright. It just wouldn't. But going to the next term, like funky would be more of like a barnyard finish. And for me, if you've ever smelled like wet hay or wet grass, like that to me is like a funky. It's just funky. Like tart's more of like a flavor description, less than an aromatic description. Where like tart is very like on the tongue. It's literally on the sides. Like when you drink or when you ever had a Warhead, like that's tart. But those are my descriptions of those three characteristics.
Yeah, I mean they're all very different, like flavor descriptors. I mean, if you're talking about like what is bright versus what is funky, or I believe was part of the question, like funky, bright for me is usually something that is lively, high carb, but usually has some element of like leanness or acidity to it. Although not like heavy acid, but like enough acid to like make your tongue wake up. Versus funky is going to be more Brett forward. So it's not going to be that sharp acidity. It's going to be more earthy elements. As Keith was saying, there's many different types of funky, like wet grass, wet hay. I like to think of like damp autumn leaves that are starting to like almost compost, or like old library books. Like those are, or like saddle leather. Those are the funky elements, I think. Versus bright is going to be more acidic, bright. Without using the word, it's going to be more acidic focus. It's going to like liven your taste buds.
I think like bright. A good way to describe bright is if you take a can of Sprite, room temperature, and drink that can of Sprite. Like that is bright. It's super effervescent, super highly carbonated, like super acid forward. Like you're not really tasting anything but carbonic acid with a warm soda as Sprite, you know?
Yeah.
But
that citrusy element could be also described as bright as well. So
I think when
hopefully
we're
that
talking,
partially answers the question.
so when we're talking about beers, like Wild is more of the way we make it. It's not really a flavor descriptor if you're looking for a flavor descriptor. But when we're talking about flavor, so you have sour beer, and then you have a range of sour, right? So sharp is like on the extreme edge. When we say sharp, we're talking about like pucker at warhead, yeah, high acid. And when we say tart, it's more just like, oh, it's tart. Like it's got like that hint of it. So it's like
there's a little bit of an edge of acid.
exactly. So it's you have sour beer and then you have the ranges of it. So I think this is a great question because it's something that even we like are still working on how to talk about, but Wild is not really a flavor. Wild is more of a descriptor of how it's made, and if it comes out of Teru, it's wild. Bell looks like he has some thoughts here.
Oh no, I mean this could be easily an hour-long conversation.
Yeah.
I would argue that there is something of a wild flavor if you really want to go there, but I think wild when we use it is more of a technique, as you mentioned. But like there are beers that we make that could have a wild flavor.
I would call those fun.
I think, but like this conversation could be its own happy
It
hour.
could be its own like GABF like forum. Like we could do hours on this. So let's move on. We're gonna hit a few more questions. I'm gonna try to keep this under 2 hours, so that gives us like 15 minutes. So next question. This is a good one, but I don't understand it. So how would you build a custom home beer bar? Are you talking like the aesthetic design? Are you talking about like a draft system? Give us some clarification there, and we'll try to answer it. But here's a really good one from Dave. Shout out Dave, longtime member, one of the coolest guys. What's the next brew school, Keith, and when, Keith?
So honestly, like we need to get our tasting rooms open again. Like it's more of like a tasting room opening. Because Brewsicles are one of those beers that we're working on, like being able to package. We're working on it, but we're not quite there. We're not quite able to put it into a package and have the stability of the beer and the fruit like not flock out or fall to the bottom of the can. So we're working on it. Yeah. I wish I had a better answer, Dave. I love this guy.
All right. So Lupe signed on late. This is a very good question for Andrew Bell, who just left. What were the adjuncts for Three's Co-Company? Logged on late. You should have been here on time, first of all. But the adjuncts are, who wants to handle this one?
So it looks like according to the bottle anyway, it's saying coconut, milk, sugar, and oat milk.
That is correct. Yeah, those are the adjuncts. Let's see. Here's a good one for all the production guys, all our brewers. Have you guys ever experimented with a flavor that just didn't work out or stuck out in the beer too much? Keith.
Yes and no. So like we definitely had some adjuncts that stuck out too much, but the beauty of barrel aging is we have the ability to kind of dilute that if it's too much, or if it didn't work out, we add more. I mean, it's literally that simple. Like it's kind of like making pasta at home. If you're making a sauce, you're going to taste it throughout the whole process, and if you don't find it's quite there, you're going to add more, or you're going to add something to dilute that. If it's too much thyme or rosemary, like you're gonna fix that, and that's really what we do. I mean, it's that simple. I mean, it's that simple, but it's not that simple.
I do know. I get what you're saying. Damien, in your experience in the Teru cellar, any beers that have come out that you just thought like, this doesn't work, like as far as experimenting?
I mean, we have played with cucumbers in some of our beers that just came out a little too pickly for me.
But he doesn't like pickles, so
I don't like pickles though, so that's just like my taste. Is not a big fan of. I'm just not a big fan of pickles, and so playing with cucumbers, you can that's kind of get borderline with that pickly flavor. That's the one that comes to mind for me. Just cucumbers, pickleness. It's very borderline.
So here's a good question, and there's two parts to it. So Jeremy actually did back when we were open and it was a Society Member Monday, and we did a panel on tart versus sour, just how to talk about sour beer. And this actually was recorded. So follow up on the comments. We'll post the link to it tomorrow. But Jeremy actually did record. We recorded Jeremy speaking about these the way to talk about these beers. All right, so we're getting pretty close here. I think we're going to start wrapping up. This is your last chance to get in questions. I saw a question earlier. Here's a question.
What was the question that you said would be good for me to answer, and then I left?
It was about flavors that we've experimented that just didn't work. So is there anything you've tried to throw into a beer that just never happened, like squid ink or?
There's so many of them. Yeah, over the years, there have been so many of them.
So Brian Cockle said durian.
Yeah, well, I thought durian hot and Roth came out okay.
Yeah, Brian, get out of here.
But
Brian, come on, Brian.
but yeah, we did try that. Kefir lime in strong doses tastes like Windex. Like really badly, and it stains draft lines too.
Absolutely.
So I love
I
Kefir lime in cooking, but using too much of it in beer is a horrible mistake.
That seems
that one jumps to mind, but there's a lot. There's a lot over the years that we've done where it's like, would not do that again.
All right.
Like dehydrated milk powder. That's a good one from recently. Don't use dehydrated milk powder in your beers.
Was that the Thai tea concept? What was that? What were you working on?
Patrick's Thai tea concept. That was like the 5th beer off the pilot system. I actually didn't mind that beer, but a lot of people hated that. It used like a concentrated Thai tea mix. It was orange. It had milk powder. The blow-off bucket was orange. It was weird. We served it over ice back when we were allowed to use ice in our tasting rooms. The bartenders hated it. I thought it was actually interesting.
So we told somebody they could ask us anything. Andrew, who is your favorite Peloton?
Know that I have a Peloton.
You post your bike on Instagram all the time, dude. It's in the background.
I've never once posted on my Instagram.
I actually don't know that, but who is your favorite Peloton?
You have an answer.
Yeah.
Current Peloton instructor or former one? This is a weird question. I'll say Dennis Morton or Steven.
You're pretty quick with those answers.
Yeah. I love that.
I mean, it's a weird question that I'm slightly uncomfortable with.
All right, we're coming on 2 hours, so this is the last question. Dave says, I saw your comment on Kendall's Metal Ride post. So he knows.
So you're on Peloton as well, Dave. Gotcha. Matt Wilpers is a good instructor, yes.
So here we go. Last question. Mary Jane Duck says, finding that brewing is a balance between art and science. If you all could have picked a different job / career path, what would it be? Would you be a rock star, a chef, a chemist? Let's start with Jake. Jake seems like he's got a good answer for this. Where are you going?
Yeah, I'd be a stay-at-home dad. That's what I would be.
That doesn't count. Start over.
I like it.
I mean, yeah, sure. I mean, I played a lot of music like in high school and in my 20s. And I even recorded and released like an album when I was in my 30s, which I'm still in. And so, yeah, music for sure. But other than that, yeah, I just want to figure out a way. Like my fiance's in grad school right now. So the plan is for her to finish grad school. Then I'll stop working and just kind of like start to drink craft beer for a living. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, I'm about 75% there. Yeah.
That's a good answer. Let's go to Andrew Bell. Andrew Bell, I feel like it would be chef because it's just like right up your alley also, but why don't you tell us?
Yeah,
gotta go
I
Andrew.
wouldn't want to like restart my career at this point, like working my way up in the chef world, because I don't really have the chops to be where I am equivalent in the beer world. But
I think the question is actually like, what path would you have taken? Like, where would you have gone?
I would have taken the one that I'm currently taking. I was very much set up to be in like finance, investment banking track, which I'm now very happy that I'm actually more into the beer track, because that is what I am passionate about the blend of the art and science. But if it had to be another one, yeah, I guess chef would be one I'm very interested in, or winemaking. I'll take winemaking or distilling as well. One of those, something where I'm creating something that can be shared with other people.
I like it. Keith,
Yeah. So first off,
besides a professional paddler, what?
yeah. I'd love to do that. First off, though, I was gonna say like to Andrews, I was gonna say like a winemaker or a sommelier that writes books. Like I think you'd be great at that. I really do, because you've got a really good way with describing beers. You got a really good way of describing wines. But yeah, so I think for me, like, I really would be something hands-on. Like, I would love to do like small construction projects. It's kind of weird. I would love that, or finance derived, but really writing about like business profiles. I know it's strange. It's not really my forte, but I love reading about like business life cycles. I don't know if that's okay, but that's what I'd like to do. Yeah, you asked me. I just told you the truth.
Damien, besides being a professional disc golf player, what would you do outside of working at the brewery?
And a Formula One racer.
Formula One racer. Can't straighten out my arm to get to that steering wheel, but besides that, probably be like a Twitch streamer.
Oh,
Just
no.
like, yeah. Oh, absolutely. It's I mean, let's stay home. Like, you don't have to go. It's basically being quarantined, but
What do
you
you-
get to stay home, play
What
video
game
games.
are you focusing on?
Right now, I'm actually on Rocket League. I've been tearing it up on Rocket League. But F1 Racing too. I've been racing in 2018 because it's free on Xbox right now. But 2020 is coming out this Friday. It's already pre-downloaded on my
Okay,
Xbox.
well, thanks
Ready to
everyone
go.
for coming. It's been fun.
Daniel, you didn't answer the question.
Twitch
dude.
streamer for. Oh yeah, Daniel, you go.
Yeah, Daniel is a Twitch streamer professional.
Oh yeah. He's playing Hello Kitty Sunshine currently right now on Nintendo Wii U.
Wow. If I wasn't in the craft beer industry, it'd probably just wine. I'd probably be doing the same thing for wine. I don't know. I didn't think I would have to answer this. Thanks everyone for coming.
No, let's hear an answer. No.
Yeah, what is it?
Or maybe Val wanted to answer. I saw she said.
Yeah, Val's right there. Oh, she's walking away.
Oh, Val, come on in.
Let's hear an answer.
Let's hear an answer from Val.
Yeah, I was expecting Val to be on.
You guys haven't met Val. Val is our content creator. She does all these videos that you guys watch. She does all of our social posts. Val, what would you be doing if you weren't in the beer world? Like, where's your passion?
Get closer.
Writer.
Get far away. Get closer. There you go.
Writing about beer or anything at all. I just love to tell a good story.
There you go. I didn't have to answer it. I love it. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We're gonna cut to this video and then we are out of here.